Hey guys, I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Have you picked up your copy of Toshiden Volume 3 yet? It's available right now, so head over to Amazon or kowabana.net to pick up your copy right now. There's a whole bunch of new urban legends in there, so don't miss out. On this week's episode, and in the weeks leading up to Kowabana's 100th episode, I'll be featuring a few of the classic stories that I haven't yet done on the show. This week, we're kicking off with a classic that deals with some tough issues. Burakumin villages aren't a new or even rare topic for creepypastas, but this story is perhaps the most well-known and well-cited one that deals with the topic. Let's head straight on in. This one's called Ria S. Ward. This story takes place in a certain area of Kyushu. It's about a place called Ria S. Ward, which can be found over the mountain from an area that I'll call S. Ward. These days, they don't call it Ria S. Ward anymore, but New S. Ward instead. But my grandparents still call it by its former name. Well, calling it Ria doesn't really have a good meaning to it either. That implies that the place is a Burakumin area. It's a place that often gives lectures in high school on the discrimination of the Burakumin people. That's where this story takes place. But at the end of the day, this is a personal, subjective story, and I'm not here to talk about the discrimination or social integration of the Burakumin. Several years ago, a guy, I'll call him A, went missing. It turned out he killed himself. I'm from S Ward. He was from Rear S Ward, but he went to high school in S Ward instead. Anyway, he was my friend. Emphasis on was. We were best buds in the first grade. That was until he started to bully someone. That someone was me. Nobody around us tried to stop it. They didn't try and they didn't even look. They weren't even bystanders. I pleaded with him to stop, but he beat me and kicked me. The first time it happened, I thought we were just mucking about, but he was much bigger and stronger than me. But the next day, he suddenly hit me again. For no reason. I asked him why, and he said nothing. He smirked at me, and honestly, it frightened me. But then one day, A suddenly didn't show up to school. I was pretty happy about that. But thanks to everything that had been going on, nobody approached me to talk. For the first time, I tasted real isolation. Even though I was surrounded by people, I was unmistakably isolated. Then, 3 weeks after A stopped coming to school, the teacher called for me. This was our conversation. You were friends with A, correct? No. Okay. You didn't bully him? I'm sorry? Huh? Me? You mean A bullying me? No, you. It's okay. I won't say anything to anyone. You can tell me. I won't make a big deal of it. No, but me. At the time, I had no idea what he was saying. Apparently, amongst the teachers, I was the one doing the bullying, so I decided to tell him the truth. I don't really want to talk about it, but I was the one being bullied. I was punched and kicked in front of everyone. Are you being serious? You and other students saw this? They did. I mean, did you really think I was the one doing the bullying? Did someone tell you that? No, it's nothing. There was clearly something off about the teacher's behavior. It was like he was trembling. A few minutes later, we both fell silent. Then, a few minutes after that, he suddenly spoke up. You see, he hasn't been to school, right? We don't know why, but we've tried calling his parents thinking that he was playing truant, but nobody's answering. But then yesterday, we finally got in contact with A and asked him what was going on. He said he was afraid of you. I'm sorry. Me? Yeah, that's right. He said that you were scaring him. Wait, me? It's the other way around. I'm afraid of him. Is that so? Okay, I see. I'll talk to him again, but you're not the one doing the bullying, right? That's right. After that, I went home. I thought real bullying involved several people picking on just one person. I'd seen bullying take place when I was a junior high student, so that was my image of it. And you often hear of a group of people attacking one kid for his money or stripping him naked in the toilets, that sort of thing. That's what I thought bullying was. I never once thought that it could be one person bullying another single person, and that the teachers would get wrapped up in it and others would shun me. For the first time in my life, I entertained thoughts of murder. I didn't want to beat his ass. I wanted to kill him. For real. From the next day, I stopped going to school. I didn't feel like it, and even if I did go, I'd just be alone, I thought. But during this time, I saw something unbelievable, and it made me go a little crazy. I saw someone jump to his death. Someone who lived in the same apartment building as me jumped off the roof. I was waiting for the elevator to arrive when I heard this strange voice like, "Gee!" And then a few seconds later, "Dawn!" That dawn sound was apparently the sound of the man hitting the bicycle shed roof below, and when I looked over the edge, I felt sick. Tears streamed down my face. It was nothing more than a feeling of terror, but to me, a kid who'd been bullied, it wounded me beyond imagination. I was traumatized, and even now I can't use elevators. I mean, I can use the escalators in the building at work, but things where you can see outside, like at the apartment, I can't get on at all. All because of the unbelievable thing I saw that time. When I looked back up from the bike shed, I saw a spiral staircase nearby. A person wearing the exact same clothes as the man who just fell, although the hair was slightly different, was standing there. I think that was something I shouldn't have seen. Looking down, he slowly descended the staircase. With his eyes cast down, he descended incredibly slowly. He and the other guy were like two peas in a pod. Then the elevator arrived with a ping and surprised me, so I turned around. He was there too. At least, I think he was. I don't really remember so clearly now. When I try to remember now, it's like, was he really there? But at the time, I definitely thought he was. When I turned around, I again heard the dawn sound. But this time it was coming from inside the elevator. Dong, dawn, dawn. I was starting to panic so much I felt like I was going to pass out. I was taken to the hospital right away. The doctor told me to forget what I saw and heard and prescribed me some medicine. For the next week, the best I could do was groan like, ugh. After that, I started to feel better, but in reality, I was just fooling my parents and the doctors. I wasn't really feeling better. Rather, ever since that day, the dawn sound was swimming around and around in my head. After that, around the time I started to think of returning to school, I remembered A. It was his fault all this happened to me in the first place. If he hadn't bullied me, none of this would have happened. He caused all this to happen, so he should just disappear. That's right, I would entrust myself to that dawn sound. That was honestly how I felt. I'd gone crazy. I really wanted to ask the owner of that sound for help. I went to school the next day, and during lunch I told the teacher that I wanted to go home early. The teacher knew what was going on with me, so he quickly gave his okay. A was also absent from school that day. On the way back, I ran into the old guy who gave a lecture at the school the day before about eliminating discrimination against the burakumin. He was A's uncle, and I'd spoken to him many times before. But after seeing me, his appearance and attitude visibly changed. When he first saw me, he went to say hi, as usual. But then after that, it was like he didn't want to see me again, and out of nowhere went, "Ah." I wondered if A had said something to him as well. My persecution complex exploded, and I walked past the old guy, trying to ignore his strange attitude. But then he suddenly started muttering sutras as I passed. I was like, "What the hell?" and turned back to look at him. Then he returned to his, "Ah" attitude again. If that had been all, then I would have had no problem with it. But then, he started praying again. For the first time in my life, I hit someone. It might sound like I'm just making excuses, but I was emotionally unstable and not thinking about right or wrong. I just felt irritated. Perhaps because it was so sudden, the old guy went, "Ugh!" But I ignored it and started kicking him. Just the fact that he was related to A pissed me off, so I kept kicking him. "Oi! Your family's just a collection of freaks, huh? You're fine living your life looking down on others, huh? You're all high and mighty about discrimination, but you don't give a shit if you do it yourself. Is that it? Huh? Say something. Come on. You were the one born in an area that deserves to be discriminated against. Are you screwed in the head?" Then something unexpected happened again. The following is said conversation. "What the hell is wrong with you? Laughing like that out of nowhere." "You. It was you." "What the hell are you on about? Is there something funny?" I was still kicking him at this point, but the kicks were getting weaker. "I finally met you." "A's already." I couldn't catch what he said. "Huh? Is your whole family trying to bully me now?" Around here I was starting to get scared, so I stopped kicking the uncle. "Hey, what you do is up to you, but you're gonna be in for a world of pain. Even if my brother forgives you, I won't." "Huh? Are you all screwed up in the head? Is that it?" "Shut up for a second. Just be quiet until I say that you can speak." "What the hell are you on about?" Suddenly something rang in my ears. I freaked out and turned around. A thin, flat face covered in blood was shaking and laughing at me. I lost it again. The face was strange. To say it was like looking at only half a regular person's face still wouldn't be enough. But if I had to compare it to something, the face in front of me was like someone on TV whose face was cut off by the camera. That's what it looked like. Then A's uncle hit me, and I blacked out. When I woke up, I was at home, but in my parents' bedroom instead of my own. It was 8 p.m. Light was shining in from the living room, and my parents were talking to someone. I got up and opened the door to see who it was. When I did, I jumped. A's aunt and uncle were sitting on the couch, talking to my parents. The moment I saw it, I couldn't stop myself. I ran at them. My parents held me back, but I remembered howling at them. A's uncle apologized to me over and over. "I'm sorry, I was wrong." But there was no way I could forgive him, and I struggled in my father's arms. Then my mother suddenly slapped me. "You should listen to what they have to say as well." But at that moment, I just felt like my parents had betrayed me as well, and tried to fly out of the house. I broke free of my father and ran to my room. I grabbed my jacket and wallet, but the moment I put my jacket on, it felt like there was a hand in there other than my own, so I screamed again. Everyone came running and A's aunt started chanting something. A's uncle grabbed my jacket and started stomping on it. My father turned pale as he watched, and both he and my mother put their hands together in prayer as they looked at me. At that time, I honestly thought I'd gone crazy. A few minutes later, things calmed down, and we all went back to the living room. The whole time, A's uncle continued to apologize to me. The conversation we had there and what happened once more I'll never forget. Below is what happened. I'll call A's uncle B-san and A's aunt C-san. "I'm really sorry for hitting you," B-san said. "It's okay. I was also annoyed, so I'm sorry." What did you do?" my father asked. I hit B-san." No, that was because I started praying the moment I saw you, so you got upset, right? It's not your fault. It was my fault for acting that way so suddenly." "I'm terribly sorry. I hadn't heard that particular detail," my father said. "Huh? What are we talking about?" "I hit B-san and then... I remember what happened just before I passed out." "Hang on. I saw something just before I passed out." "Yeah, you probably did," B-san said. "I realized it the moment I looked at you. Something was there with you. That's why I started to pray." "Is everything okay? When you say something, what was it?" my mother asked. Do you know why they call the area we live in Rear S-Ward?" C-san said. Pardon me for being rude, but it's because of discrimination, right?" my father said. "That's just what they say over here. Your grandparents often said it, right? Don't go near Rear S-Ward." "They did, but I thought that was because it was a Burakumin village. Is that incorrect?" "No, that's right. There's still discrimination, even now. But the history of Rear S-Ward is a little strange. Both myself and my wife were born in S-Ward, so we know that much, but isn't the discrimination against Buraku villages and other small villages all the same thing? So, of course the history would be a little strange," my father said. "Haha, right? That's what everyone thinks. Even though Rear S-Ward is a Buraku settlement, it's not a settlement of people from other countries. It's a settlement of people who lived here since long, long ago," B-san said. "Okay, but I don't really understand the difference." "It's that thing, isn't it?" my mother said. "The story of the Kimon. The gate through which the demons enter a town." Kimon? Something like that. But there are a lot of people in Rear S-Ward that have the same surname as myself, right? "There are a lot, yes. You and A-kun are related, so of course you share the same surname. But yes, there are a lot. Even though you don't see that name in S-Ward, you often see it over in Rear S-Ward. It was said in the past that that area was a pathway for spirits. Have you ever heard of..." I couldn't catch what he said here. "I've never heard of the name, no. But I have heard the word before," my father said. "Well, that area is that type of place, and those from our family line are said to be able to sense the supernatural. Thanks to that, there are those who go insane, and because you could never tell what they were going to do at any moment, the village turned into a Burakumin area, and we were treated differently to everyone else." "But if that's true, Rear S-Ward is so large. Isn't it a bit strange? Can an entire village really be divided just because of one family? My mother asked. Yeah, it can. At first it was only 3 or 4 houses that went mad, but then it started to spread throughout the village and, in the end, up to 40 or 50 houses fell to it. Thus, people thought the entire area was strange. But in the Showa era, deeply religious people started to decline in numbers and fewer people believed in such a ridiculous story. And yet, it still became a buraku area? My father asked. Well, that's what our family is taught anyway. We treat all children who are born as though they are able to sense the supernatural, and although some can't, we still tell them that ghosts exist, C-san said. What does any of this have to do with what I experienced? Don't you think that A has been behaving odd recently? B-san said. Even putting aside that he suddenly stopped going to school, hasn't there been something strange about him? I don't know about recently, I said, but he did suddenly start beating up on me. Suddenly? He didn't say anything. No, just suddenly. I don't know why. Ah, so that's what you mean. A suddenly started acting strange. He started seeing ghosts, so he started to go crazy. A's a good boy, B-san said, but he just didn't know what to do. Huh? He's not a good kid. He's the one who started punching and kicking me and laughing whilst he did it. Everyone was so scared that no one would stop to help me. Were you ever injured when he attacked you? I mean, attacking you is bad. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But the way our family deals with seeing ghosts is by laughing. That's why people view us as oddities. But in general, they ignore us. Are you saying my son is possessed? Yes. The ghost is there right now. Can you see anyone on the veranda right now, Okun? I'm sorry? What did you say? The veranda. It was at this point that I saw something different to the thing I saw before I passed out, and I felt like I was going mad. It's okay. It can't get in here, C-san said. Huh? What can't? My father said. He couldn't see it, of course, and neither could my mother. Ah, well, you see, there's a ghost following your son around, B-san said. That thing? Is it because I saw that guy jump? No, that's not it. That was just by chance, a coincidence. But there's another thing other than the guy on the veranda that has attached itself to you as well. Eh? Yeah, and this one's dangerous. Strictly speaking, it's not a ghost. In our family, we call it XXX. You can't say the word out loud. It'll quickly change its target of interest if you do. He looked at my parents here. XXX? I don't remember what my mother said here, but it sounded like butter something. I don't know. There. Now it'll attach itself to me, so my son will be okay, correct? My mother said. No, it doesn't work like that exactly, but please don't say it out loud again. I'm more worried about my son than anything like that. But if you do that, it'll make things even worse. Just stop it already. What the hell is going on? I've been cursed by some spirit and Ace saw it and started hitting me? But that's not right. Is that the type of thing you'd normally do? I mean, laughing while hitting someone? Is that gonna drive the spirit away? I was a little bewildered. I'm sorry. He only did that because that's all we ever told him, C-san said. When performing an exorcism, one must laugh whilst driving the spirit away. It's like, I've got all the time in the world for a pain in the ass like you. Then, When you hit the possessed person, the spirit will be driven out. Of course, you must say the sutras and charms as well, but I think he just did what he saw the rest of us do, B-san said. But he kicked me as well. Yeah, he went too far there. But the reason A stopped going to school was because he's scared of you. Well, he's scared of the thing attached to you. After talking for a few more minutes, C-san went out to the parking lot to get her exorcism tools, while B-san stayed behind to watch over me. It wasn't like a Shinto exorcism, or the type that you see at a temple where they chant and hit drums either. They just laughed while reading sutras. But they didn't sound like sutras either. It was more like a constant mumbling in a small voice. They hit me over and over and brushed my head. When that was over, B-san said, "It's all over now." C-san asked me, "Can you see it still?" And I nervously looked towards the veranda, but nothing was there. The next day I was able to go back to school as usual, although I was unable to use the elevator alone, so my parents always joined me. But that day, A started acting even more strange, and that night we got a call from his father asking if he was at our house, because he wasn't at home. The next day, his parents and uncle put out a request for a police search, but because he left a letter, the police treated it as A running away from home and refused to look for him. The reason his parents called us was because my name was mentioned in the letter several times. Even though I was possessed, I still hadn't forgiven A for what he did, so I honestly didn't care what happened to him. On the morning of the third day after he went missing, I heard the dong sound again. I thought that was all over with, so I broke out in a sweat and ran to my parents' room. As I calmed down, I realized it had just been a dream. At least, that's what I convinced myself. But then I heard that A threw himself off a building and killed himself that morning, and as night fell, I was too scared to fall asleep by myself. They found a suicide note, so there was no doubt that he killed himself, and in it, there was a part addressed to me. "I'm sorry. I was at fault. I think there's a lot of people in our village and my family especially that go a little crazy, you know? I don't want to blame my family, but I really am sorry for hitting you. I'm sorry." His wake was held the next night. I went with my parents, but I really didn't want to go. They said to me, "They're just holding a memorial service and you don't want anything strange to happen, right?" So I reluctantly went along. The wake itself was rather odd. Like, a normal wake has a picture of the deceased, but instead, there were pieces of paper with A's name written on them. They were pasted all over the sides of the coffin, and as I approached it, I was overcome with this sense of unease. According to B-san, if we place a photo, the photo will transform. Nobody can bear to look at that, so this is what we do in this area. But by writing his name and putting it all over his coffin, that means it's A, not XXX. I didn't really understand what he was saying. It was a little too strange. Then A's father approached me. "I'm sorry we caused you so much trouble." He showed me the letter A wrote when he left the house. It was just like I said above, and I really didn't want to look at it anymore. There was also a part that said, "That thing has attached itself to O, my name, and it keeps acting like it's going to kill me. My uncle, B-san, said he exorcised it, so it's okay, but it seems it's moved to me instead now. I don't think my father will be able to get rid of it, so I'm going to go visit Mum. If I see that thing along the way, I'll take a different path." A's parents lived apart, so it seemed he went missing on the way to his mother's house. But for some reason, the police treated it as running away rather than someone who left the house and then disappeared. I really shouldn't have looked at that letter. He wrote it. It was confusing, and I didn't want to remember all the unreal things that had happened until that point. I was so scared I started shaking. The fact A killed himself in the morning as well filled me with fear, and I wanted to be anywhere but there. I wasn't the strange one. He was. There were no prayers, and his coffin sat in a bungalow covered in pieces of paper with his name written on them. In the end, several of his family members laughed out loud. I heard a strange story that in Korea or China that people will participate in funerals just to cry for the dead, but the funeral rites in this village went even beyond how strange that was. Even my parents became scared of what was going on. "Let's go," they said, and after saying their goodbyes, we left. A few days later, B-san told my parents that what attached itself to me was A's grandmother, so B-san's mother, who had turned into XXX, a ghost, although he didn't say as much. I didn't want to hear about it anymore, but they said I should listen, so I did. The man who jumped to his death was also from Rear S Ward and had been possessed by XXX. They don't know why I was also possessed, but they said it might have happened when I went to visit A's house one time. But there were two things I was scared of and wanted to ask about. The first was the face I saw before B-san hit me. The second was the man on the stairs, who looked exactly like the man who jumped and then approached the corpse at the bottom. For the second point, B-san said, "There are a lot of dead people who don't realize they're dead. So when he saw himself at the bottom of the stairs, he went to pick himself up. But because I got in the way, he tried to curse me. When I tried to tell him that I did no such thing, he said, 'You called the elevator, right?' That ping sound was enough." His tone and choice of words turned harsh. It was like he was going to jump at me. Even my parents were scared. He continued, "Look, you're not allowed to look at such things. You get me? I can, but not you. Don't look. At me, at anything. Oi, are you listening? Hey." My parents got angry at him, of course. "What are you saying? What good is scaring him gonna do?" B-san appeared surprised. I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry. I just thought I'd ask about it since I was here." His tone changed back to normal. "Even if you tell someone not to look at something, they're gonna want to look at it even more. But it's okay now, right?" He repeated, wondering to himself. Then he turned to me. "It really is okay now. I'm terribly sorry. That man also died because he was being chased by XXX, and because he was angry at what was possessing you, he also started to chase you." As for the first point, that was XXX. I don't think this name was Japanese, or maybe it was a dialect expression. A's grandmother had become XXX, but because his father couldn't be counted on to exercise her, it never happened. But of course, once his son died, he resolved himself, and the purification took place the day before B-san came to see us. Then I saw B-san off as he went to go home. The moment he stepped outside, I suddenly heard the sound of his laughter. I fell to my knees in shock. "Those guys really are messed up," my father said. I don't know if he was scared or angry, but it sounded like he was screaming. "We shouldn't associate with them any longer," my mother said with tears in her eyes. It didn't feel like the guy that told us that story about laughing to exercise things was The same guy that suddenly started laughing loudly the moment he left our house. The three of us couldn't move until the sound of his laughter disappeared. We went back to the living room. "They're all weird," I said. "They're not right. I mean, that guy took the elevator back down, right?" "Don't call him that guy. He's still older than you," my father said. "Anyway, let's try not to get involved with them anymore." He went to lock the door when we suddenly heard a voice scream, "Hurry up and leave!" My heart stopped. My mother jumped. The Evening Post was sitting half in the mailbox when my father went to lock the door, so he opened it to grab it from outside. But he saw B-san was still standing by the elevator, grinning. My father lost it and screamed that he was going to call the police, even though he was scared. The neighbors came out to see what all the fuss was about. "Huh? No, I was leaving just now." "What? What is it?" B-san said, then started grinning again as he stepped into the elevator to leave. My father started screaming, "Scatter the salt! Salt!" The neighbors probably thought he was a bit crazy too, as he spread salt outside. After that, I went to a famous shrine with my parents to be purified, and then we moved. We didn't move out of S Ward, so I was still in the same district for my old school, but I changed schools to a different ward, and I haven't been near rear S Ward ever since. It's called New S Ward now, but the area itself hasn't changed at all. My cousin goes to school in S Ward, and he says they still have social integration lectures. And although they don't speak about it out loud, he said there's still discrimination in the area. But to the bitter end, all they'll say is that the village faces discrimination. There is no information about the situation in rear S Ward, and when people call it that, the teacher corrects them and responds nervously that it's New S Ward. I think this is due to Kyushu's particular human rights doctrine, teachers' organizations, and so on. As for B-san, we cut off all ties with him entirely, so I don't know what he's up to now. My parents had no particular feelings towards rear S Ward until all this happened, but since then, they've been rather prejudiced and avoid all contact with people from there. I haven't had any supernatural experiences since then either, but I'm still unable to take the elevator alone, and my wife makes fun of me because, although it's embarrassing, I can't sleep alone either. Right after everything happened, I even had to wake my parents up to go to the toilet at night, despite the fact I was a high school student. But bit by bit, I've been able to bury the fear. When I hear someone is from rear S Ward, rather than discrimination, I feel fear, and I'm unable to talk to them because my entire body is filled with terror. Sorry for such a long, poorly written piece of text. At any rate, I'll leave it here as a story of my own personal experience. Thank you so much for reading. Our last story for this week sees a group of friends head to a mountain thought to be haunted for a little fun late one night, and as you can no doubt already guess, they run into something there that soon makes them regret that choice. Find out what in Spirit in the Hollow. This happened several years ago, when I was in university. At the time, I was still in the prime of my life, and I especially enjoyed driving to various ghost spots with my friends. One day, right around the time the summer holidays were ending and it was a little chilly, my friend A suddenly said he wanted to visit a particular ghost spot. This ghost spot was a local mountain, somewhere not very well known, but apparently someone had once killed themselves there. It was dangerous, and people said that if you visited the place at night, you might find yourself bringing something else back home with you. Of course, not a single person was against the idea, and so the 5 of us, A, B, C, D, and myself agreed to go. It was a 30-minute drive away. A lived nearby, so he could walk there from his parents' house, while the rest of us drove. When we arrived, A was already there. We parked at the nearby supermarket and then started walking towards the mountain. We walked for a few minutes before we spotted the entrance to the mountain at the end of the small farm road. "The mountain looks like it's covered in something dark," B suddenly said, the only one of us who could supposedly see ghosts. Of course, I couldn't see anything. The only thing I could see, with the help of the moonlight, was the trees just ahead of us. I wondered if he had bad eyesight as I went to enter the mountain path. But before I was able to, C found some sort of iron pipe. A water pipe? And, just in case, decided to pick it up and take it with us. C had long studied an ancient Japanese martial art, so if it came down to it, I planned to run and leave matters up to him. "I don't feel so good," B said as we started walking up the mountain. "And everything's getting dark." I felt much the same way. Things seemed to be getting darker. But then, the trees were pretty dense, so of course things got darker. "Of course it's darker," everyone said, making fun of him. But then suddenly a shrine gate appeared before us out of nowhere. And there it is, I thought, honestly about to wet myself. I turned around, but there was nothing behind us. The torch we had was barely enough to rely on in the pitch-black darkness. "I can't go any further," B said, almost on the verge of tears. He would no doubt have started crying if we forced him, so we left A and B behind and continued ahead. Even though A was a local, he also looked petrified. "Come on, let's keep going," the rest of us said, before we lost our nerve as well. We forged on ahead. Before long, we found something that looked like the tiniest hollow. If I had to compare it to something, maybe like a shell mound. There was something wooden inside it. Could it be? Not a single person leaned forward to touch it. I should have stayed behind with the others, I thought regretfully. And then I noticed a light deep in the trees. No, it wasn't a light. It was something white, and it appeared to be floating in the darkness. "Hey!" The other guys seemed to have noticed it as well. "We should get going, huh?" I said, almost about to cry myself. Then it appeared again, swaying in the air. It seemed to be getting closer. We should have run away right then and there, but it was difficult to move, and we found ourselves stuck there, staring at it. Slowly it swayed towards us, and the moment I realized what it was, I thought I was a goner. It was a face. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but I could faintly make out long hair, so maybe it was a girl. I couldn't make out whether the face was laughing, crying, or angry. It seemed to be every emotion at once, and it was slowly, but surely, getting closer. I was so scared that I couldn't even speak, yet somehow, when I tried to scream from the very bottom of my insides, "Ta!" Someone screamed nearby. It was C. He screamed and ran at full speed with the pipe held above his head and brought it down on the face. "Ta!" He screamed again, bringing the pipe down over and over like he was trying to smash the face into pieces. I had no idea what to do. "Let's go," D said, approaching me. Honestly, I thought something might have possessed us as we ran. We somehow made it back to A and B. They'd heard C's screams as well, and so, when they saw us come running full speed towards them, they were confused. "I don't know about C," I said. But then he came running in behind us, huffing and puffing. "I had no idea where you guys went. It was so dark. C got pissed off at D, who had the only light. I mean, you were the one who suddenly started acting nuts, I said. I did not. I was just trying to get rid of that thing, he said. We told A and B everything that had happened. That's definitely not good, B said. Don't worry, it ran off somewhere and disappeared, C said, calm and collected. Either way, it was still scary, so we decided to leave the mountain right away. Several years have passed since then, and nothing bad has happened. C especially is as energetic as ever, living his life to the fullest. Everyone has since moved away from that area, but we often get together for drinks, so maybe we'll head back there sometime, if the opportunity arises. Honestly speaking, I have no idea what we saw there that night, nor do I know what that thing in the hollow was either. Once again, a massive thank you and shout out to this week's Cummy tier member, Jojo. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Toshiden Volume 3, available on Amazon right now. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.